In today's video, I'm going to show you how to winterize your sprinkler system and take care of your garden hoses at the same time so that they won't freeze up during the winter. Now this is an easy DIY job if you know a few simple tricks and can see someone else do it. The first step is easy. You need to turn off the water that feeds your sprinkler system. Now hopefully you know where this valve is, and it's likely to be in your basement or in a crawl space. Next, you will need access to an air compressor. Now it doesn't have to be a big one like this. Even a small pancake style will get the job done. Now just turn your air compressor on, but the next step is so important that if you skip it, you could ruin your entire sprinkler system. Now every air compressor has two gauges. That gauge on the left is the pressure of the tank itself. Now that's set by the manufacturer and it's going to reach about 130 psi. But that gauge on the right is the one we want to pay attention to. Now most air tools run at about 90 psi, but that is not the pressure you want to feed your sprinkler. So you need to turn that valve down until it gets to about 40 psi. This is what sprinkler manufacturers recommend, and if you go higher than that, you can actually burst the pipe or damage your heads. Now we need to connect that air supply into the sprinkler system so that we can get all the water out. Now we're going to do that by locating the backflow preventer, which is almost always going to be outside your house. Now your valve might vary a bit, but this is what most of them look like. What we're looking for here is a spot to connect our air line to, and it's easy on this one because I've got this simple valve. And this valve is new on my sprinkler system. Last year I had a blankout plug that I had to remove completely every time I wanted to winterize the system. And if you've got that type of a setup, you can make your own adapter and it's really easy. You're basically making one end that connects to your air line and the opposite end will thread into your plumbing system. And if you've got the garden style valve, your life is going to be a lot easier because they pre-make these things now for you. On one end it connects to your air line, it's got a shut-off valve, and then the opposite end allows you to thread it right on. There's a few different companies that make these, but they pretty much work all the same. You're going to thread it onto the valve, close the air valve, and now you're going to connect the opposite end to your air line. My air compressor is not really portable, so I had to connect two air hoses together so that I could reach the sprinklers. That's another huge benefit if you've got a smaller air compressor that you can take it right to the location you're working. Now we just need to let the air into the system, so start by opening up that garden hose valve and then flip the valve on the adapter itself. Now you may hear a little bit of air going in, but because the zones aren't open right now, the air is not flowing through the system. Now if you've got an electronic system like a Rakio controller, you can go into your app, program all the zones to run one after the other, and I like to set them all to run for 3 minutes per zone. Now if you don't have a computer controller like this, don't worry because I'm going to show you an easy manual way to get the job done. Now as you run each zone, water will start to come out and it'll kind of look like it usually does, but after a minute or two you're going to hear air coming out, clouds of mist, and that's a good sign. If your zones are really long, you may need to run it for longer, or what I like to do is I run it twice. So I go through all the zones for 3 minutes each, then I start back over and I run them again for 3 minutes each. I often find that there's water in the system still, and it just gives me that extra insurance so that I know they're not going to freeze during the winter. Now if you don't have a computer controller like that, you can use your regular controller to get the job done, but if you don't want to touch your controller at all, you can just do this. You want to go find where your valve cover box is, and it might be covered with grass, so you'll want to dig it up so that you can get access to what's inside. Now once you've got the lid off, you're going to notice that you'll have a number of valves. And these are a very common style, and on the top of each valve is something with some wires. Now that's actually called a solenoid, and if you look closely you'll see something printed on them that says turn a quarter of a turn. And what that means is you can actually manually run each zone just by twisting that small solenoid. So just get a hold of it and give it a twist to turn it to the on position a quarter of a turn. You'll hear the water going through the valve, and that means that the valve will be working just like if the controller turned it on. And just turn each one of these and allow it to run for 3 minutes and do zone by zone until you're done. Now many pros will do it this way because they don't need to access the customer's home, but this can be very helpful for you because if you don't know how to do a manual zone run, this is a lot simpler and it'll get the job done exactly the same. But now that you're done with your sprinklers, let's move on to your garden hoses. And if you've got an expensive garden hose reel, this is even more important. Many people will drag their hose reels into their garage or basement each year, and you really don't need to. The hose and the plastics can handle freezing temperature, but the water in it can't. So we need to get the water out, and this is such an easy way to get the job done in about 10 seconds. So take that same adapter that I showed you, and because it threads onto a garden hose, you can simply connect it to the end of your hose reel. Once you've done that, you can connect your air line, and you're going to do the same exact thing that you did with your sprinklers. And as you turn that air valve on, make sure you have a good grip on the other end of the hose because that water is going to come out with quite a bit of force. Now at this point you can go ahead and leave your hose outside and you shouldn't have any problems throughout the winter. I've done it this way for over 20 years and I've never had any issues during our New England winters. Now that reel you're looking at there is made by the company Hose-A-Lock. It's a British company, but unfortunately they don't make this reel anymore. I actually bought it about 15 years ago. This thing has lasted forever and I've always winterized it like this. If you live in a cold climate, you want to take care of your sprinkler system and your hoses because they can cost big money to repair and you just don't want to be out of luck when spring comes around. So I hope in this video I gave you a couple of tips to make the job a little bit easier and possibly to convince you that you can do the job yourself. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you're not already for more videos coming up.